Is this the luxury electric SUV to rule them all in Australia? It's the 2025 Polestar 3, and it's big in many ways. It's a large SUV to start with, it's fully electric, it's big on power, it's big on tech, it's big on safety, and it's got a pretty big price tag as well at over $130,000 before on-road costs. Now, does it all make sense? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. So this is a large SUV. We're looking at a car that's nearly 5 meters long. It's around 4.9 meters in terms of total length. But no, it's not a big family car in terms of seats. This is only a 5-seater. And I think when you look at it from the side here, you can see why. They call this an SUV. I suppose it's got cladding around the place and it's got a slightly raised ride height. But in terms of the roofline, this is a low slung vehicle. It's got a really sporty look, I think. It feels low and wide. It looks low and wide as well, but you definitely don't have room for a third row in the back there. So this car, what does it compete with? I think there's definitely Mercedes-Benz EQE SUV. There's the BMW iX. There's also the Audi Q8 e-tron that this is going to be going up against. So it's going to have a fight on its hands, but Polestar reckons that this is, for them, the next generation in luxury electric motoring. Now, don't forget, if you're in the market for an electric car, or in fact any car, don't forget to go to Drive Marketplace because there's plenty of listings there.
The 2024 Polestar 3 is coming to Australia with 2 introductory launch edition models, both of which are all-wheel drive and with a relatively high level of standard equipment. And after this stock clears, Polestar will revert to 2025 models with lower levels of standard kit and value for money overall, but there will also be a new price-leading single motor variant that you can choose from. Initially, however, we've got the starting price of $132,900 plus on-roads for the Polestar 3 long-range dual motor variant. Now this gets 360 kilowatts and 840 Newton meters, with power going to all 4 wheels with a torque vectoring dual clutch setup at the rear. The dual motor with a performance pack ups the outputs to 380 kilowatts and 910 Newton meters, along with forged 22-inch wheels wrapped in Pirelli P0 tyres and retuned air suspension. But of course, this comes with a bump in price, going up to $141,900 before on-road costs. Both variants of the Polestar 3 get the same 111 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is sourced from CATL and uses nickel manganese cobalt chemistry. Peak charging speeds are limited to 250 kilowatts, which gives a claimed recharge time of as little as 30 minutes at its highest pace, going from 10 to 80%. Claimed driving range is 610 kilometers for the long-range Polestar 3 in WLTP testing, but the addition of the performance pack drops this number down to 560 kilometers, once again claimed. Standard kit for the launch edition Polestar 3 models include adaptive height adjustable air suspension, 21-inch wheels, automatic LED headlights and tail lights on the outside, and on the inside we've got 14.5 inches worth of infotainment display and a particularly nice 9-inch digital instrument cluster. But I've got to say, what's even nicer is the 25-speaker Bowers & Wilkins sound system, which has 1,610 watts of output. It supports Dolby Atmos and it is a real treat to experience. Now this sound system is included with a Plus pack, which is standard fit for the time being on this launch edition model. Now this also gets upgraded interior materials and features and the 21-inch wheels I mentioned earlier, plus soft closed doors and a power adjustable steering column. Now, along with heated front seats and driver's memory position, along with the electric tailgate and 3-zone climate control, there is plenty of extra kit in this Polestar 3 that I can't really squeeze into this voiceover. So check out the full list of price and specs on Drive.com.au.
The interior of this Polestar 3 is a pretty special place, as you can see, and I do like it for the way that it looks and feels overall. Now, there's a lot of detail to get through this car in terms of the sustainable focus that Polestar has, in terms of the materials, how much impact they have in terms of grams of CO2 produced per square meter even of the materials. There's a lot of detail there that I can't really get through at the moment, but rest assured that Polestar make a lot of noise about how sustainable this car is compared to others. But I think more importantly for the end buyer, the touch and the feel of this car does feel really good overall. It looks quite flash, and you get some different choices of materials along the dashboard here. We've got this more satiny metallic sort of finish here. You can get more of an open pored wood setup going on, but it's minimalist and it feels quite nice. Now you've got this big infotainment display here. This is 14.5 inches in size, and it's actually running a new generation Android operating system, which is a little bit different to what you might expect in other vehicles. Now it does take a little bit of time to get your head around what's going on here, but I think after owning this car for maybe a week or 2 weeks, you will understand what's happening, you'll learn where things are, and you'll get along pretty well. Now there's a few things I want to point out here that I'm perhaps not the biggest fan of, and that's the fact that some of your adjustments actually, if you want to move the steering wheel column, which is electrically adjustable, there isn't a knob on the column itself. You actually have to do it through here, press the steering wheel button, and then this can go up and down. It's just a little bit less intuitive, I suppose, and I don't know if the Scandi chic design would be that ruined by a little knob on the column there, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Also, side mirrors, they get adjusted through there in the same way, so you can't do it on the move as easily as you can with other cars. But in terms of other things here, it does work pretty well overall. You just need to spend a little bit of time to learn where everything is. Now you've got two USB-C power outlets tucked down here behind the screen. There's plenty of storage down here as well for things like handbags and that sort of thing. Two cup holders up top, and my old nemesis piano black materials around this cup holder area. Now, I do love the fact that there's a volume dial. You can pause, you can navigate, you can turn the volume up and down nice and easily there. But this material, I've already noticed that there's a few scratches around here. If you've got a big bangle on your hand or a bracelet or something like that, not going to take too long for that to look a bit weathered, and I see this in a lot of cars. It's not just a Polestar thing, but it's something to be aware of, I think. Now, materials otherwise, this steering wheel, it looks and feels pretty good. It's not the same sort of perforated, really luxury feeling steering wheel that you get elsewhere, but I think it's good enough. The seats are nice, they're very nicely bolstered, and there's plenty of adjustment going on here. So in terms of the driving experience, which I will get to later, it is pretty good. This center console is pretty big as well. It's nicely flocked. I think this interior, it balances pretty well. I think the design, the minimalist design, but also being nice and functional. This digital cluster, for example, does work quite well. It looks fantastic also. But there's a few things that maybe won't be to everyone's taste if you prefer a bit of a traditional interior. But once you get used to this, it is really nice. Now, you might not be able to get a third row in the Polestar 3, but the second row, I've got to say, is pretty good in terms of space. Now, as usual, that's my driving position up front there. I'm a little bit over 1.8 meters tall, and as you can see, there's absolutely bucket loads of legroom going on. There's heaps of space in here. It's a fully flat floor. This is really good. Headroom is good also, even though we've got this massive glass roof above us here. There is no cover there, so maybe you'll get a bit hotter on those summer days, but headroom is good. I can lean back. I can be quite comfortable, I think. I can even squeeze my feet under the seat in front there. I've got air conditioning controls here, so that's a climate control button there, air vents, USB-C power outlets. You can fit 3 across, obviously, and don't forget that this is a fairly wide car overall, so it does feel like there's pretty good space here for fitting 3 adults if you needed to, but it'll be quite luxurious when it's set up with 2, because you've got this nice wide armrest here, 2 cup holders there. You know what? You don't have a third row, but you do have an excellent second row in this Polestar 3. Currently driving the big dog of the range. That's the Performance Pack Polestar engineered model. So we've got 380 kilowatts available and 910 Newton meters, which are pretty monstrous numbers. Now this car, it's not the same level of crazy performance that you get elsewhere in other high performance electric SUVs and sedans, but let me tell you, it's plenty potent enough. And I've got to say, even the regular model, it's got lots of performance as well. So if you want to spend the extra $9,000 on this model, go for it. But I've got to say, you're not missing out on a terrible amount if you go for the lower model as well. Now, in terms of the driving experience, there's a lot of things that this car does well. It's quiet and it's refined. There's almost no road noise coming into the cabin on this road we're on at the moment. And it's just easy and comfortable, and it feels pretty confident actually just to punt around in. It's got that nice balance between ride comfort, but also feeling quite square on the road and hold down in terms of its capability. And that comes from things like dual chamber air suspension, adaptive variable damping, and some driving modes that you can dig into to see what you prefer in that regard. But this does have that nice sense of balance, I've got to say. And when you start to push things along a little bit more, you're chasing a couple of corners on your favorite backcountry road, I've got to say, despite being a 2.5, nearly 2.6 ton vehicle, it does hustle along pretty well. The roads that we've been driving for the last day or so have been quite twisty and tight with some hairpin corners, but we've also had some rain, so I haven't been pushing this thing absolutely 10/10ths along these roads, and I don't think this is the particular car for it. But when we've had a nice little section to see what this car can do, it does feel quite confident, it does feel stable and responsive enough. Like a lot of electric cars, it's not the final word in terms of communication and engagement and that sort of thing, but it's confident and it feels pretty good. Now, all that performance and all that weight does come at a cost, and I've noticed that in terms of the efficiency of this vehicle. Now, we've got a massive 111 kilowatt hour battery underneath us here, and the driving range is pretty good in terms of the claimed range. We haven't done a thorough test of the actual driving range in the real world during this test, and it's been up against it a little bit, I suppose, because we've had very cold conditions. It's been around 9 or 10 degrees all day, a lot of wind chill factor happening. So the driving range has been, I suppose, pulled back by the fact that we've had the heater on. Electric cars, just generally speaking, don't like cold conditions in terms of how far they can drive. But still, using around 26 up to 27 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks doesn't mean it's going to be the last word in terms of efficiency overall. But hey, this is a big luxury electric SUV. It's big and it's heavy. It's nowhere near as slippery as others in terms of the drag coefficient. Polestar designers have clearly gone for something that looks quite eye-grabbing and interesting, I suppose, in comparison to something like a Mercedes-Benz EQE sedan, which is, well, it's very slippery in terms of being in the wind tunnel, but in terms of looks, I think it leaves a little bit to be desired. So I get where they're coming from. Now, we do have good levels of adjustment available to the driver. So you can change the amount of throttle response going on. You can change the damping from a softer to a firmer setting. But I've got to say, all of them are quite well balanced overall. The firmer setting doesn't make this thing a bone-jarring ride, but it does seem to tighten up the steering a little bit and give you a little bit more feeling on those tighter roads. You can also add a little bit more resistance to the steering feel. You can adjust the height of this air suspension, and also you can go through a couple of different levels of one pedal driving. So there's good modification available there, I suppose, just to get it to where you want it as a driver's car. But in terms of just the inherent feel of it, I think it feels quite good overall. It's a big, lumbering, long, heavy vehicle, but credit where credit's due. I think making this car drive as well as it does is something of a feat of engineering, and getting enough ride quality into it with big 22-inch wheels, well, I take my cap off, because that is a pretty good job. Now, because Polestar is closely related to Volvo and is owned by the same parent company, we've got effectively Volvo's full suite of active driving and safety technology in this Polestar 3. And that's a good thing, because Polestar, in my experience, have been one of the best in terms of having good safety equipment on board that doesn't get in the way of driving. But I'll note this, that this car actually does have it turned off when you jump in and start driving. So in terms of things like driver fatigue monitoring, you can have that turned off. Traffic sign recognition, you can have that turned off, or you can just have it in a way where it warns you without binging and bonging and flashing at you, which I think is an important thing for those people who don't want to be distracted. Now, the worst I can say about it is on these Tasmanian roads where we've got a soft shoulder on one side and some lane markings that come and go, I felt a couple of little tugs at the steering wheel a couple of times as the car's trying to figure out where the lane is. It's been only a few times and it's not too bad. It's definitely not the worst out there, but it's still worth noting. You could argue that Polestar needs a bit of a statement vehicle in Australia at the moment, and this Polestar 3, I think, does it well. We don't know how many of these sorts of cars they're going to sell over the next couple of years. There's a bit of a slowdown in terms of the electric vehicle space. There's a cost of living crisis, blah, 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 all of those things. But what I do like about this car is that it sets itself apart from others in the segment. There are some others out there, but this does look and feel different, and I think that is really important. And for the end buyer, this will do what you expect of it. It's quiet, it's fast, it's very refined, it's loaded with tech, and that technology actually works quite well in terms of the driving experience and living with this car every day. And even though it weighs 2.5 tons, this thing does hustle around the corners pretty well. The negatives for me, well, it is a bit pricey, I suppose. The range isn't necessarily that good, I think, and also it's not that efficient. So you're looking at a bit over 25 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, depending on conditions, and for me, that's a little bit high. But in terms of being smooth, quiet, loaded with tech, and all of those good things, this does hit the right notes.